Well, welcome to the Health Freedom Doctor podcast. We are sitting today with a special guest, Zen Honeycutt from Moms Across America, and this will be shared in the Path to Freedom community within the Port City Pioneer here, which is a virtual community. We are based in Wilmington, North Carolina, and we are just excited to get into this discussion today with Zen. So welcome, Zen.
Thank
Grateful that
you.
you're here.
Thank you, Dr. Bradley, and thank you to all of your listeners and your patients and everybody who shares this information. It's crucial that we get the conversation that we're having today out to the public. And I really appreciate meeting you at Meatstock and
Yes.
connecting and the fact that you're getting the fact I have to say that you are the health freedom doctor is completely in alignment with every part of my being. My actual commitment is to create a future of health and freedom. So that's what I focus on. When there's actions to take, I take my actions based on health and freedom, not on I'm too tired, I don't have enough money, I don't know how to do it. Like those things, I have to, set those aside and say I'm creating a future of health and freedom. So I love it that I'm on the Health Freedom Doctors, podcast today. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited because those that get to hear this, I believe that many are going to be awakened to the information that you share with us today, and look forward to providing what it looks like when a mom with conviction really steps out to look out for not only her own children, but for children around the world. And that's the impact that you've made in such a short amount of time, really, when you stop and consider. Um, but diving right in, so before Moms Across America, there was Zen the Mom.
Mm.
Um, Walk me through the moment you first suspected that food was the variable, and what happened when you went GMO free and organic.
Great. Yeah. So I was a mom of three young boys. And when my son was 5 years old, my eldest son, Ben, had a life threatening allergy attack eating. There were some pecans in the Thanksgiving stuffing, and his body blew up like a raspberry. His eyes rolled back in his head. I had to will him back to life in the car, pretty much, demand that he breathe. And I went immediately to the hospital, hooked up on steroids, and thank God he lived. But in that moment, I was completely baffled as to what was going on. Just like actually millions of families that suffer with allergies and life threatening allergies in America today. I was completely confused and just had accepted it as the new norm for quite some time. And then when my son was 9 years old, he, had been suffering for a long time. He had a rash around his mouth. His lips would swell up. They would crack. They would bleed. He would have to go to school looking like a vacuum had sucked on his face. He had rashes on his body, all kinds of issues. To be fair, I was vaccinating. I trusted my doctor, and he had quite a few vaccinations. And so his immune system was compromised, I now know, from the toxins and the vaccines. And I had no idea about GMOs or glyphosate or pesticides in the food supply. I was eating as healthy as I thought I could. But at that moment, when he was sitting at the breakfast table with this rash on his mouth, he looked at me really forlornly one day and he said, Mom, I wish all my allergies would go away. And I said, Me too, buddy. But then I thought in my head, that's never going to happen. And that's what the doctors had told me, right? That they would only get worse. And in fact, these nut allergies would be life threatening the more often that he had them, and he could die. And so then I thought, wait a second, my cousin Sarah had gone gluten free for a year. And after that, her gut healed enough so that she was able to eat a slice of pizza, at a birthday party or a piece of wedding cake at a wedding. And so I told him about that. And I said, would you like to someday, painting a picture of him in the future, um, to be able to eat a slice of pizza at a birthday party? And his eyes got all big and he said, yes. And I said, well, then would you be my partner in your health? Would you drink green drinks and go to chiropractic, acupuncture? Like, would you do whatever it takes? And he thought about it very seriously and he said, yes. And I said, then I promise you, buddy, you will get better. And I didn't know how, but I shook his hand and I made a promise to him. And we learned about GMOs, about glyphosate, about what's going on in the food supply. And I realized that that was it. When I learned about GMOs from Robin O'Brien and Jeffrey Smith, I was like, these foreign proteins in the food, these pesticides, these genetically modified foods are engineered to withstand pesticides or to have a pesticide built right in or to have a desired trait like salmon that grows 4 times fatter, 4 times faster, and be sterile. These desired traits means they're messing with the genes, and the GMO actually what's caused in it is thousands of off-target mutations. I'm like, these changes to food are not good. They're definitely related to our children's allergies, and we've got to raise awareness about it. So I did that. I partnered with my son. He did not have to go to a doctor for physical ailments for 10 years. We saved over $100,000 of doctor appointments. He did have other issues later, which we can talk about later, but we saved hundreds or at least $100,000 just on him alone. My other kids also, my other 2 kids got better, but it was that moment when I made a promise to my son that I got dedicated to not just his health, but to every child's health. Because once we saw him improve, in 4 months, that allergy, that whole problem went pretty much away. It was just a faint pink line under his lip that only lasted 2 days. His allergies went from a 19 down to a point 0.2. So we essentially healed his gut enough so that he could, not react. And when he did have accidental exposures, he didn't have to go to the hospital. I mean, it was the exact opposite happened from what a doctor told us, right? His body healed enough so that he could be exposed by accident and still, be okay and not have to go to the hospital. So
Yes.
anything's possible, I believe.
That's right.
That's
That's
right.
right.
That's right. I mean, it's
The Path to
the
Freedom
Path to
group. We're
Freedom
walking
group. We're
through a
walking
90
through a
day
90-day
challenge,
challenge,
and
and
we have
we
finished
have finished
three
3
instructional
instructional
segments on
segments
just
on
gut
just
health
gut
and the
health and the
Great.
restoration of the gut
restoration of the
through
gut
a
through
carnivore
a
diet,
carnivore
and
diet, and
the
the
pathways to
pathways to
the tight
the tight
junctions
junctions beginning to
and
crumble,
those
and those
inflammatory pathways
inflammatory
that
pathways
stimulate
that
the two
stimulate
pathways
the 2
that
pathways
exist,
that exist,
one through the
one
gut and
through the
the other
gut
that
and
can
the
be
other that can be
intracellular.
intracellular.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely,
definitely,
definitely.
definitely.
The word
The word
gluten
gluten
free.
free.
Mhm.
We hear it all
We
the
hear it
time,
all the
gluten
time,
free, but
gluten free, but
really,
really,
is it
is it
that we
that
or
we
gluten
are gluten
sensitivity, I should
sensitivity,
say.
I should say.
The
The
sensitivity to
sensitivity to
gluten is
gluten is
really
really
the
the
actual
actual
chemicals
chemicals
themselves that are creating
themselves
the
that are
problem and where
creating
the
the problem and where
sensitivity
the
is coming
sensitivity is
from.
coming from.
I'm sure
I'm sure
Yes.
you may have
you
noticed,
may have noticed,
maybe,
maybe,
traveling the
traveling
world.
the world,
I've
or
heard
I've
stories of
heard
people that
stories
have
of people that
traveled.
have traveled.
They can't eat
They
bread in
can't
the
eat bread in the
U.S. They go and
U.S. and
they'll
they
eat
go and
bread
they'll
in
eat
like
bread in
Greece
like
or
Greece
something,
or
and
something,
I
and
didn't
oh,
have
I
any
didn't have any
flares. Come
flares.
back
Come
home,
back
Yes.
and
home, and
it
it
really
really
speaks to
speaks to how
uh, heavily
heavily
laden the
laden the
crops in our
crops in our
nation
nation
are.
are.
And
And
getting back
getting
to
back to
the
the
format here,
format here,
what
what
led you
led
to
you to
fund
fund
the
Mhm.
the
first
first
consumer
consumer
funded
funded
glyphosate testing
glyphosate
in the
testing
U.S.
in the U.S.
and
and
what did you
what did
find?
you find?
Sure. Yeah. So I just want to address what you said just now real quick. So
Mhm.
when we went organic and avoided GMOs, we also went gluten free, right? But the main point was to go organic because gluten, wheat products are often sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent. They're not GMO, but they're sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent. And glyphosate is in Roundup. It's used 280 million pounds a year on our food supply, and it causes gut issues. It causes cancer, endocrine disruption, nervous system damage, neurological damage, liver disease, kidney disease, all kinds of problems, right? Reproductive health problems. So we had to go organic to avoid not just the GMOs, but the glyphosate. And that is what really helped his gut to heal. I just want to be really clear about
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And the reason why actually we funded some of it, but when we got started, my husband at the time, his rules was none of our personal money. I was a stay-at-home mom. He could not fund this endeavor, right? I had to find people to pay for things. And so that's what I did. And the reason why I started the glyphosate testing in America was because I actually was told by a farmer friend of mine when I told him what I was up to. I was like, I'm going to be Monsanto's worst nightmare, right? As a mom, right? I'm taking them on because for the other moms, I'm willing to speak up. Too many of my mom friends had kids with autism and allergies and autoimmune issues. And I said, I'm taking them on. He said, you're not going to be able to do this. They make $60 billion a year in profit. You're just, it's not going to happen. And I'm like, well, It's got to happen. Somebody's got to do this. That's what my dad raised me, right? Somebody's got to do it. Like, just
Mhm.
do it. So I sort of went after them, and as I was going after them, this farmer said to me, "Zen, you're in a battle. You've got to read the book The Art of War by Sun Tzu." And I said, "No, I'm not in a battle. I'm creating healthy communities, right? I'm not fighting. I don't want to be against, like Mother Teresa. I want to be for something, not against something." And he's like, "No, you're in a battle. You got to read that book." So I read that book, and in it, it said you have to study the enemy. So I watched a a roundtable discussion at the Heritage Foundation that was on YouTube, and it was about GMOs. And the GMO proponents were saying, our biggest problem are these mom bloggers who say that when their children get off GMOs and eat organic, that was me, their kids get better. And she said they have no evidence. And I was like, ding, she's like, because she was saying they are perpetrating a fraud on the American people. And I said, we have to get evidence. So I said, if we find, these GMOs, 80% of them are engineered to withstand glyphosate. So you can spray the corn or the soy or the sugar beets with a tractor or an airplane with glyphosate, and the weeds will all die, and a lot of the life in the soil will die, most of it. And but the crop will not, right? And so the I lost my train of thought there. 1 second. So when the GMOs are engineered to withstand glyphosate and you spray a lot of glyphosate on it, right? We're consuming it because the residues don't wash, dry, or cook off. So it's in our bodies. So if 80% of GMOs are engineered to withstand glyphosate and we could get rid of glyphosate, then those GMOs would no longer be able to be used in the marketplace, right? And so that was actually what I was going after when I got started was the GMOs. I didn't think that glyphosate was as harmful it was, and then I learned over time. And so I said, we've got to find glyphosate in our children's urine, in our tap water, in our breast milk. We've got to show evidence that these products are harming our families, right? And connect the dots. Like, it wouldn't prove it, but if you could detect it first, and then you could connect it to the ailments that we're having, we could be, more likely to connect the dots. So I had my farmer friend, and he found a lab where the owner of the lab used to work at Monsanto. And he developed the testing, the screening with Monsanto. So he knew what he was doing. And he helped me because he wanted to do better. So this is why I never discount people in their past. When somebody says, "Oh, well, they used to work at Syngenta." Well, maybe that's why they're going to do good. Like, I've lobbied with people from Syngenta, right? I've lobbied with people whose fathers worked at Monsanto. So, so that's what we did. We utilized his lab, and people sent in their own urine and tap water and paid for it themselves to start with. And then we found a funder to pay for 10 breast milk samples. And that changed everything. Once people in the United States and in Europe learned that there was glyphosate in breast milk 3,000 times higher than has been shown to cause liver sex hormone changes and cause liver and kidney damage, that went international. It was translated into 7 different languages. Farmers in Germany and Italy and Switzerland and all across Europe stopped spraying glyphosate as a drying agent on their wheat. And this is a major reason why when you go to Europe now, you can eat those croissants and the pizza and the pasta and not gain weight like you do in the United States, or rashes or headaches. So that finding was really, a huge. I'm so grateful to the moms who had the courage. Could you imagine to send in your breast milk for testing? That
Yeah.
takes some courage. It wasn't me. It was 10 other moms who did that. I just asked them to. And and it was then since corroborated. There was a testing done in Pennsylvania where they found similar results, and there was a testing done in Germany where they found similar results. So that was the start of getting glyphosate testing done. And then we continued on to pesticides, heavy metals, veterinary drugs and hormones, minerals, all kinds of things. And we've tested, hundreds of different kinds of foods. Other people have tested thousands of different kinds of foods. So, and now glyphosate, you can go to a doctor and say, "I want to get my urine tested for glyphosate." That was not happening before. We couldn't do it. I tried, and you couldn't do it. So I'm very proud of that. It's a big accomplishment, I think, for all Americans that we can now test for glyphosate.
Yes. Definitely. So
Definitely. So
explain
explain
glyphosate
glyphosate
kind of its
kind of
history.
its
I know
history. I
you
know
shine
you
a lot of
shine
light
a
on
lot of light
this
on this
in the
in
talk that
the
I heard
talk
you
that I
give.
heard you give.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure. So glyphosate is a chemical that was discovered that was used as a pipe cleaner. Like it kills everything it touches, every living thing it touches, it kills it. Okay. And it's also a chelator. One way that functions is it grabs onto and makes unavailable the vital nutrients of any living thing it touches. It also grabs onto heavy metals. So it's used as a pipe. It was originally used as a pipe cleaner. And it also functions as an antimicrobial. It's registered as an antimicrobial. It kills off beneficial gut bacteria and allows for the proliferation of pathogenic gut bacteria. So it is very, very harmful to gut microbiome and to the way that our entire body functions. And it's also an endocrine disruptor, meaning it disrupts our endocrine, hormone. That doesn't just mean reproductive; it means your mood. Your mood is affected because serotonin is affected,
Mhm.
melatonin, so your sleep is affected. It is the way that it functions, the chelation, the endocrine disruption, and the it being a carcinogen and the antibiotic. If you understand how it interacts, it also breaks through the blood-brain barrier and allows for other environmental toxins to get through the blood-brain barrier or the liver, the kidney. So it increases the harmful impact of all the other environmental toxins. So things such as mercury or aluminum that are in vaccines might not be quite as harmful if glyphosate wasn't there, but it is. We tested anyway 10 years ago and found glyphosate in all the childhood vaccines we tested, and another lab confirmed with separate batch. So the way that glyphosate functions in the body is so insidious that when scientists Stephanie Seneff and Anthony Samsel claimed that it was connected to 40 different Western medical diseases, a lot of people called them Looney Tunes because it just seemed too far fetched. But when you understand how glyphosate works, it completely makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So
So
what's
what's other
toxic
toxic
pesticides and
pesticides and
chemicals that
chemicals that
moms across
moms across
America is
America is
tracking right
tracking
now?
right now?
Right. So we started with glyphosate, which again is a weed killer, and it's used on crops and also parks and playgrounds in our communities. And we started raising a lot of awareness about that. Other people were talking about it in relation to bees and butterflies. We were one of the first groups to really get the word out about its impact on children's health. And when farmers started to go away from glyphosate, they started to using these older, even more acutely toxic chemicals. Meaning by acutely toxic, I mean kills more than 50% of the test subjects, the animals or fish, within 96 hours, right? That's acutely toxic. Glyphosate is not as acutely toxic as some of these other chemicals. It's more long term harmful, right? It like causes cancer or birth defects or over time. So these other chemicals, such as paraquat, diquat, 2,4-D, atrazine, dicamba. The farmers started using these other, chemicals in replacing glyphosate as a drying agent on crops or as weed killers. So then we said we got to test for more pesticides. When we also learned, I was on the board of the Organic Products Advisory Committee, actually for the Secretary of Agriculture for the state of California. I was as a representative of the consumers for a year.
Mhm.
And when I was on that board, I learned that the FDA or whether it's USDA or FDA, the California Department of Food and Ag, and the US, I believe FDA, the FDA tested for about 1,200 samples every year to check for pesticide levels, right? The residues. And the report that they gave to our group was that 98% of the samples were below maximum residue levels for pesticides. That sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as a mom, though, they have a saying, a worried mom does better research than the FBI. Well, as a mom, I tend to do a little bit of research. And I was like, well, let's just see. First of all, what are the maximum residue levels, right? What are their maxes? And I found that the EPA sets those levels. And for example, wheat is 30 parts per million. That's 30,000 parts per billion. And according to Dr. Don Huber, a 60-year plant pathologist, it only takes zero point 0.1 parts per billion to cause sex hormone changes and liver and kidney damage. Zero point 0.1. And on wheat, it's 30,000, right? On spearmint and peppermint, it's 100,000. On corn, it's 13,000, right? So it's like it is really, the levels that they allow are also, by the way, not based on health. They're based on an
Okay.
industry use, right? So on corn, they had to bump it up from 2.5 to 13 parts per million. That's a 300 times increase because they were using more on corn because the weeds were becoming super weeds, right?
Wow.
So it's based on health. I mean, it's based on industry use, not health and standards. So the MRL is basically complete junk science, right?
Yeah.
Secondly, I asked what pesticides were being used versus what does the EPA say are the most widely used pesticides? So I asked the EPA, what are the top 25 most widely used pesticides? They gave me a list, or I found it on their website. I forgot which one, but I got that list. And then I compared it to the pesticides that the FDA and the California Department of Food and Ag were testing for. And guess how many were on that list?
Zero.
Zero.
No, they did a little better than that. The FDA was testing for 2 and California was testing for 3 out of the
Holy
top
Three.
25. They weren't even testing for the most widely for the most of the most of the most
Yeah.
widely
Yeah.
used pesticides and herbicides, and they're definitely not testing for, I found, for 40 years they haven't been testing for paraquat. It's the most toxic pesticide out there. It's banned in the countries where they make it, in China and in Switzerland.
Ugh.
But thank goodness Vermont just banned it. So we're looking at other states and potentially a federal ban. Oh no, yeah, Pingree and Luna just put out a federal ban for paraquat. So I really want to thank our supporters that helped get our Yes Ma'am group, the legislative arm, the Moms Across America movement, to DC, because I am sure that lobbying over a year every single month for that has something to do with that, with paraquat
Yes.
ban
Yes.
being put out.
Well,
Well,
turning
turning
to
to
um,
um,
the natural
the natural
progression of
progression of
motherhood
motherhood
and
and
kid
kid
enters
enters
school,
school,
um,
um,
school
school
lunches. Think of
lunches.
school
Think of
lunches.
school
A
lunches. A
kid goes to
kid goes to
school; they're
school.
eating
They're eating
5 days a
5
week
days a
at
week at
school.
school.
You
You
have
have
a
a
program for school
program for
lunches where
school
you've made an
lunches where you've
impact
made an impact
through school lunches,
through school lunches,
mainly through
mainly through
the
the
USDA, who sets the
USDA, who sets the
standard
standard
for school
for
lunches.
school lunches.
Who has
Who has
influence over
influence
those
over those
standards and
standards
who
and who
doesn't?
doesn't?
So the USDA does have a huge amount of influence, and also the dietary guidelines, right? That department is what had to happen first. So the nutritional guidelines have been changed to allow for more meat and protein. And for instance, now schools can add an egg to breakfast, right? They couldn't do that before because of the nutritional guidelines. So thank God for Trump having the wisdom to bring Kennedy on, and Kennedy attacking that, right from the beginning, and getting nutritional guidelines changed. I think it was within a year of being in office. And that was a
Yes.
big task. Usually it takes other administrations, I think, 4 years to set nutritional guidelines. And so that was really wonderful. And so that going forward will be very beneficial. And we believe that a major reason why that happened was because our supporters, specifically the Center Wellness in Florida, and Children's Health Defense, and our Moms Across America supporters, funded 40 samples of school lunches to be tested. We had our supporters get school lunches and freeze them and mail them to the lab, and the results were horrible. It was over 93% positive for glyphosate, 100% positive for heavy metals. I believe there were 29 different pesticides that were found. It was a very high percentage of pesticides in the school lunches, 70 or 80% or something like that of pesticides in samples were found to have multiple pesticides. One of the veterinary drugs and hormones that we found too was an aviary contraceptive in school lunches. An aviary contraceptive, meaning it prevents the bird from laying eggs. What is that doing to our children, to our girls and our boys?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We found very toxic heavy metals, high levels, but that are known to cause permanent brain damage. And we found very low nutrients, like abysmal levels of nutrients. The levels of nutrients were so low that the owner of the lab said there were more toxins than nutrients in this food.
Wow.
Wow.
So
So
when a
when
parent
a
goes to the
parent goes
school
to the
board and
school board
says,
and
"Hey,
says, "Hey,
I have a
I have a
problem with how you're
problem with how
feeding
you're
my
feeding my
child,"
child," What can they do to leverage their local community, like right here in New Hanover County?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's actually how I got the impetus for how I got started. I went to my kid's school, and the school principal didn't believe me about Monsanto. He said, I don't think anybody would be that evil. And but he did believe me about Roundup, so they did stop spraying Roundup, so that was good. But we couldn't do anything about the school lunches, and I was crying afterwards. I was talking to my husband about it because we just lost GMO labeling too, and he's like, "Zen, you're talking to this one school across the street. This is actually a federal issue because the school lunch system is a federal issue. You're playing too small of a game. You got to play a bigger game, right?" So the bigger game has been played and is working out, right? The nutritional guidelines have been reset, so now it goes back to the smaller game, right? Your local school across the street, you need to educate your school food director that it's time to source better foods. And going through that sourcing process is it's a learning curve, right? They're going to have to learn. I got to find different vendors that perhaps, will sell me um olive oil and avocado oil and coconut seed oil instead of GMO canola oil and GMO, corn oil and all that. I've got to find different vendors who will sell me organic apples locally or organic, vegetables. So it's going to take some time for that, or source eggs, right? And hopefully pasture raised organic eggs. Probably not likely, but eventually that could happen. You could really end up having the school be the source of an economic farmer boom in that local area, right? That
Yeah.
that school could be like, "Hey, we are going to be purchasers of 5,000 apples a year. We're going to purchase 20,000 eggs a year. We're going to purchase, 40,000 pounds of flour a year. We want these things grown locally." The schools could revive the economy through the local small farmers. We get a lot of kids on video games. They could be getting out in the fields and growing apples, right? Or raising chickens.
Yes.
So we could see this as a boom for economic revival in our communities. And if the parents go to the schools and say, we want local organic sourcing, the school directors can do it now. There's a lot of restrictions that have been cleared away for the sourcing to turn to local and organic.
Yes. Well,
Yes. Well,
Oh, and I
what
have
does
to
it
what
say
does
one
it?
more thing.
Yes.
There's an
Yes.
organization called School of Lunch, Hillary Boynton and her team, that teach school lunch directors, how to do that and how to cook the whole foods. And then there's Turning Point, Turning Green, sorry, Turning Green has a project called Conscious Kitchen, and they have done that in Marin County. They changed how they source their food. They source locally. They cook whole foods. So there are organizations that have already done this. Eat Real is doing some great work. Like there's a lot of, we had a Safe School Meals Coalition call for several months where we were bringing those people together. Those videos are available up on our website. So there's a lot of direction. Friends of the Earth has done a lot of work on this with school lunches in California. And so there's a lot of people that are working on this. And you just get started by getting to know your school lunch director and asking them to start sourcing one or two things. Like Conscious Kitchen did cereal and milk. They said, let's just start with the cereal that the kids are eating in the morning and the milk and get those to be organic and local, right? As much as possible.
Hmm.
Maybe the cereal's not, but the milk, to get that to be local. So you can just start with one thing and make a huge difference.
Yes.
Yes.
What does a
What does a
neighborhood food
neighborhood
network
food
look
network
like
look
on the
like on the
ground?
Hmm.
ground?
And
Yeah,
how does
thank you.
somebody
And how
So
does
get
we
somebody
involved?
start one?
Yeah, we have a program that we have a page on our website, Neighborhood Food Network, and it's really to encourage people to get to know their neighbors and to grow food in your backyard, your front yard, your rooftop, your wall, your porch, and then share it with your neighbors. Exchange it. Like if somebody's growing a lot of tomatoes, somebody else could grow a lot of potatoes, right? And then you could exchange. And that creates a culture of partnership and support and connection. And in times of, trouble, power outages or any other problems, you're going to have partners then instead of adversaries, right? And that is what will really have us not just survive but thrive in times of chaos. If you think about it, we're in a bit of a chaotic situation in America right now. And the words in Chinese, the symbols that make up the word chaos are danger and opportunity. And so you want to look at where you can create opportunity in any type of situation of chaos. And that is, to me, it's an opportunity to get to know your neighbors and to connect and create. We call it uh, creating national food security one street at a time, right? With the neighborhood food
Yes.
network. So we have support on that: when to plant, how to reach out to your neighbors, flyers that you can give out, connect with your neighbors and talk about what you're going to grow and share it together. It's for some of our people, it's the best thing that they've ever done. Like, they now know 65 of their neighbors that they never knew before, and they're sharing food, and it's like so enriching for them. So I highly encourage it.
Yes.
Yes.
And
And
last
last
question.
question.
What does
What
freedom
does
actually
freedom
look
actually
like
look
in a
like in a
household that
household
has
that has
made the
made the
shift?
shift?
That is such a great question, and it's actually going to be the topic of a conversation we're going to have with Charles Eisenstein at my part. He worked on the Kennedy campaign, right? He was the communication manager. He's coming to my property, Love Rising Farm, in just before Fourth of July, and we're going to talk about what does freedom look like, and in many areas of life, and in the household, what freedom looks like to me. Um, there's a couple situations. Like, one is where you can grow your own food. You're saving your own seeds. You're not paying anybody to grow food. To me, that is true. That's food freedom, right? You are able to save your seeds, grow your foods, hatch your own chickens, right? They keep cycling. You get more eggs and more chickens and meat and all of that. That to me is food freedom. Now, not everybody can do that. So, another aspect of freedom around food, especially in health, is that you're eating food that's not toxic, right?
Mhm.
It's just clean and it's free from toxins as much as possible. And you're more likely to be able to do that if it's whole foods, right? If you're not eating highly processed foods, protein powders that can be contaminated with glyphosate, all kinds of processed foods. Now, one of the reasons why so many people eat meat for years and feel better eating meat is because meat, especially beef, is more free from pesticides and toxins than any other food. We just talked about all these pesticides that are sprayed on corn and soy and wheat and beans and peas. That's why I think so many people cannot eat grains and they go paleo. And then some people, even paleo, they're like, we're still eating some of these other foods every once in a while that have pesticides on it or heavy metals. Or the other thing people don't think about, it's mycotoxins. Mycotoxins come from mold, and glyphosate increases the presence of of mold on crops by 15 times. So huge amounts of mold are now growing on our grains in the Midwest, and their byproduct is mycotoxins like xenolone and uh, uh, ochratoxins and aflatoxins, and they cause mental illness and depression. So having heavy metals, pesticides, and mycotoxins in our food, we're not going to have freedom to have health. Right. So a lot of people, especially people who have MTFHR genes and other gene variants, are not able to detoxify those toxins in their food. So they develop, health issues, mental illness, depression. Unfortunately, what ended up happening to my eldest son. He had those genes. He could not detox, even though he ate organic for 10 years. His physical health improved, but his mental health declined because he also was eating vegan, and his
Mm.
cholesterol went very, very low because he wasn't eating animal products. And that also contributes to depression. So unfortunately, he succumbed to depression, and he left this earth about 10 or 11 months ago. And
Mm.
I thought I could talk about it without that happening, but
No.
I really wish he had known about meat stock and the benefit that some people have from eating only meat and having freedom from those toxins. That's what we need. Is we need freedom from toxins, and we need nutrient dense food, and then we'll be able to live a life where we can live up to our fullest potential. And that's all I
Yes.
want for people, for people to be able to live their lives and live up to their fullest potential, because I believe every single person has an incredible amount to contribute to this society and to our world. And that's just what I would like for every person to be able to do.
Yes. Well,
Yes, well,
that is
that is I offer prayers for your time of grieving that nobody can
imagine or
imagine
even
or even
consider what it's
consider
like
what it's like
to
to
lose a
lose a
child.
child.
Um,
Um,
and you know
and
what you're
what you're
highlighting
highlighting
really
really
is
is
intentional eating,
intentional
right?
eating, right?
Mhm.
Like
When
when,
when it comes to
when it comes
food,
to
we
food,
often
we
think,
often
"Oh, it's
think,
good
oh,
for
it's
my
good for
body,
my
it's good for
body,
my
it's good for
body,"
my
but
body, but
also
also
within this
within this
body is a
body is a
beautiful
beautiful
soul.
soul.
And
To clear the
to
pathways of
inflammation,
inflammation, the very word inflammation means fire,
burning, right?
burning, right?
And we can't
And we
grow
can't
without
grow without
inflammation, but when
inflammation,
that
but when that
inflammation's out of
inflammation's out of
control,
control,
our body
our body
struggles
struggles
and
and
it's merely
it's
just
merely just
trying to
trying to
adapt and
adapt and
survive.
survive.
And the more
And the
that we
more that
can
we
just,
can just,
manage those
manage those
fires,
fires,
really
it
speaks
really
to kind of,
speaks to kind of,
the
the
global
global
climate
climate
movement
movement
and
and
versus
versus
regenerative
regenerative
farming
farming
revolution that's
revolution that's
happening and
happening and
whatnot.
whatnot.
Um,
Um,
well,
well,
prayers for
prayers
you in
for
that.
you in that.
Thank
And
you.
again, I would just want to
For
thank you
coming
for
on
coming
and
on
being
and
so
being so
transparent
transparent
and
and
authentic
authentic
and
in
sharing your
sharing
journey,
your
personal journey
personal
as a
journey as a
mother,
mother,
Mm.
and
what the Lord
what the
has
Lord
done
has
through
done through
you and the
you and
impact
the
that you've
impact
made
that you've made
around the
around the
world.
world.
Is
Thank you.
It's
truly,
It's
truly
all
truly a
God,
admirable.
beautiful thing.
and I just want to say that what Ben has taught me, because some people may see that as a failure, right? Like he got better physically, but not mentally. But what he taught me through that is that we can, we still need to test the food and find out what's going on. We also need to
Yeah.
test ourselves. We need to find out what's going on in our body. And we found out a little bit too late with him, right? About
Mhm.
he had high levels of heavy metals, he had high levels of mycotoxins, he had high levels of DDT and some other pesticides that I think because those foods came from Mexico, and they don't ban DDT there. And he had low levels of cholesterol, because he was a vegan, and we didn't know all of that until it was too late. And he didn't take the supplements to detox, and so I'm a huge advocate for people to find out for themselves. And on our website, momsacrossamerica.org, under resources, you'll see at the top there, get testing. So you can get your body tested and find out what your heavy metals are, what your pesticides are, and what your genetics are. If you have those MTFHR gene and other gene variants that prevent your body's ability to detox, you should know about that. Like I, for instance, don't absorb choline well through plants. So I have to eat either beef liver, which not really happening, or eggs, right? So once I started eating eggs again, because I'd avoided them for a while, my memory came back. And your memory is essential to doing anything in life, right? So you've got to support your brain with choline. You've got to eat beef liver and eggs, and maybe that's why another reason why a lot of people feel better if they start eating a lot of meat, especially with liver organ meat. You've got to see what's going on with your body. You really are flying blind in your health journey if you don't know your genetics, right? And what your genetic disposition is, and your toxic burden, your heavy metals, your pesticides, your parasites, your bacteria, all of that. So I highly encourage functional medicine testing to find out where you are in your life, and then you can, start on your health journey and recovering yourself.
Yes. Well,
Yes. Well,
thank you so much
thank
for
you so much
spending
for
time.
spending
If
time. If
anybody would like
anybody would
more
like more
information on
information on how to
where to
where
find
to
Zen,
find
I would
Zen, I would
encourage you to
encourage
go
you
to
to go to
Moms Across
Moms Across
America.
America.
You could
You could
Google it.
Google it.
Yep.
Is it
Is it
momsacrossamerica.org?
momsacrossamerica.org?
Both .org or .com. You'll find us either
Okay.
way. Yeah, and you
And
can
then you
come on our
And then
also
you
Monday
have a
night.
also
book,
have a book,
Yeah, book. It's called yeah,
Unstoppable.
Unstoppable.
Unstoppable. It's on Amazon. And Monday night we have Moms Connect calls, and we highly encourage you to find us on Instagram and Facebook, Telegram, and X as well.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much. And
much.
Thank you.
And
for those that are
for
tuning
those that are
in,
tuning in,
the wall
the
is coming
wall is
down.
coming down.
You have your
You have your
orders.
orders.
Go
Go
stand for
stand
the sake
for
of
the sake of
family and
family
freedom.
and freedom.